Welcome into the Thursday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, in for Rexrode today. Nick Keys are here with you. We got a lot going on around here. A lot going on with the Titans we're going to get into throughout the show today. Preds traded away Alex Carrier last night. Diego Pavia is now eligible again to play football for Vanderbilt next year. And by the way, Tennessee's in the college football playoff in 2 days at Ohio State. So what does Rexrode do? He decides not to show up to work. Kuharski's
does that guy even work anymore? I mean, I appreciate the opportunities to be here. I like it when it's the three of us, but if it needs to be me and you, that'll work too.
Yeah, I mean, they got all this stuff going on. He just abandoned his duties.
The guy misses a lot of work.
He really does.
He really does.
He does.
Well, I'm covering a game in Chicago, and I've got some family in Chicago, so I'm going to take the kids and load up. You know what? While I'm up there, gonna go see the Bears. I mean, this guy, for a football writer, goes to more games in the crowd than any football writer I know.
Pretty soon, he's gonna have like his chest painted out there, getting ready to go in the cold.
Devils!
No Rexrode today. Kuharski with me today and tomorrow. We got a lot to get into on that front.
And if I'm going to be with one of you, I'd like to be appreciated. So you know which one I prefer.
That's right.
And also, you know that I'm not from Boston.
That is true.
So we got that going for us.
We also have people that are already requesting, even before they come on our show tomorrow, for you to work on your Rexrode impersonation.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. Honestly, in the car this morning, I was almost going to try out loud, but I was still working on it in my head. But I don't think I have much. So I can't promise that this is going to happen. And spoiler alert, I'm going to say that Johnny was all over me because I put up a post about Survivor last night right after it was over. And he's like, why would you do that? And I'm like, well, the headline didn't give away what happened.
That's true.
And if you, for some reason, I think live finales of shows with, big conclusions are fair game. But I said, he's like, why would you do that? And I said, well, if you didn't want to know what happened, you wouldn't click on the headline that didn't give things away. He's still all over me. I'm like, someday, John Glennon, you're going to understand media and live TV
clicks
and all of these things. So I'm compelled to say congratulations to Sam Phelan of A to Z Sports, who did not win it, but was right there at the end and really had a remarkable run on this show. And what I wrote is, the Titans press room during a 3-win season can't help but be a miserable place when you're dealing with miserable people.
Yeah.
But inside this 18-game season, we had this 14-episode season with a catalyst of the show where every week we were like, give us a tidbit about what's going to happen. And then, Thursday would break down what happened and get as much information as we could get them to share about what happened. And it made it so much more bearable and fun that we were talking about Survivor instead of the Titans.
I mean, the best part of the whole season.
Yeah. But now he's going to go back to being an absolute bore next season, talking about the White Sox. So, his 15 minutes are probably up. But it was really a lot of fun to be so close to it. And all of us were, I have no interest in Survivor, but when you're friends in Survivor, it was pretty damn fun. And he had a great run. I mean, he was on the edge of out a billion times.
Yeah.
And last night, his competitor had fire that should have burnt through the sky, and he couldn't get it lit, and somehow he wins. It's pretty damn good.
Pretty good. Congratulations to Sam Phelan from A to Z Sports. Andrew Brunette will be with us at 7:30. Preds in action tonight, taking on the Penguins. We'll get his thoughts on the Alex Carrier trade as well. So a lot going on around here. We'll take your thoughts on all of it throughout the show. 615-737-1025. Brian Callahan addressing the media yesterday. Got a little spicy. We'll get into that coming up here in just a few minutes. But he did address the Will Levis part of this that we knew was coming yesterday. Mason Rudolph will be the starter, and he'll be the starter the rest of the year. It looks like here. So the last 3 weeks of the season looks like it's going to be Mason Rudolph at quarterback, obviously as long as he stays healthy. And Callahan was asked a lot of different things about Levis yesterday, one of which was, did you wrestle? How hard was wrestling was this coming to this decision, knowing that a big part of why you're here was to work with Will Levis? Here's what Brian Callahan had to say in his press conference yesterday.
Understanding that you got to just get ready to win the next game, how much does that decision kind of weigh on you and the rest of the staff, given that Will was a big talking point coming into this job about why you were excited to take this job?
Yeah, those aren't things that I think too much about in the moment. We can have those conversations at a later date. But, yeah, this is all about trying to get ready to go win this week and put the best possible product we can put on the field. But, yeah, those are things that are outside of my range of thinking at the moment, and we can revisit them at some point.
So outside his range of thinking, he was not willing to go down the long-term part of this with Will Levis yesterday, go down that road. Your reaction to what you heard from Callahan on the Levis front yesterday?
Well, he went more into coach speak mode on the long-term Levis stuff than he goes into most of the time into the coach speak mode. I can understand it because it is an end of the season conversation. But my question was, that he and they have said and indicated that this season was about Will Levis information gathering for a longer term decision. Does this mean then that he's got, sufficient information? And he gave a similar answer there. So the answer is yes.
Exactly.
I mean, if they're not playing him, not intending to play him for these remaining 3 games, they've got to decide what they're doing with him going forward. They've got sufficient information to make that decision going forward. And I think we're safe presuming that the information isn't like, this is our clear-cut starter going forward, because if he's your clear-cut starter going forward, he'd be your starter right now. Now, he emphasized, this isn't the end of Will Levis. And Will Levis certainly said, I've got good football left in me, whether it's here or somewhere else. I don't see it being somewhere else anytime soon because, as we've discussed, the other options are limited. He's under a reasonable price contract for 2 more years. It would be very difficult for him not to be in the mix as a Titans quarterback for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Unless they're of the mind that they just want him out and they want him out of here and they don't want him in the locker room after. I mean, we see this sometimes in the league where you move on from a guy that you drafted relatively high,
Kenny
and
Pickett,
it's better to just go ahead and get him out. But
he's not going to be a problem.
I agree with that.
Though
he's not going to be a problem, and he's cost control wise, he's a 2nd-round draft pick. Where if he is your backup quarterback moving forward, it's not a bad option to have as a backup quarterback.
No, especially if you're replacing him with a veteran. But even if you're not replacing him with a veteran, he's a veteran to a large enough degree now that I don't think, like, if you were going forward with the rookie, would you say, well, we really have to have an old guy in the room? I mean, maybe you go 3 quarterbacks, but it's going to be awfully hard to get 3 quarterbacks who you want on your roster at this stage, unless the third one's, Trevor Siemian on your practice squad, who is of some value because of his experience and what he can add to the practice field, but he's not a guy you want to play.
Yep, no doubt about it. You brought up the Levis comments. Levis asked about, obviously, the way that this all went down, his conversation with Brian Callahan and the future for him at the quarterback position. Here's what he had to say on that part yesterday over at St. Thomas Sports Park.
I think that's the end of the conversation. I still believe that I can be the franchise quarterback for this team. I have the utmost confidence in myself and my ability to lead any team in this league. And I think that this year was great development for me, and I think that I truly did improve. And sure as heck don't want to go out like that. And I know that, there's a positive future for me, whether it's here or somewhere else. And I just got to have the conversations I need to here, and hopefully I can show and prove that I can still be the guy.
So positive future here for me, or here or somewhere else. And, Levis kind of taking that approach that he did improve this year, doesn't want to go out the way that he went out on Sunday as a starting quarterback, and did not shut the door there publicly of being the franchise quarterback here for the Titans. But, I mean, reading the tea leaves here, PK, it's pretty obvious. Like the Titans are done with him. The Titans brass is done with him as the idea of being their for sure starting quarterback moving forward here. And I am interested to see what this now means for him, his career. You brought it up earlier this year before all this stuff ever started, when he was struggling early in the year. Could he be the type of guy that struggles early in his career, as he settles in throughout his NFL career, turns into maybe not, a high-level starter, but a starting quarterback that you can feel comfortable putting in games and knowing you've got a chance to win at some point along the way. We've seen it with Sam Darnold now, and he's played exceptionally well this year. We've seen it more and more throughout the league. Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, the examples are out there. Could he turn into that as his career goes on? We'll see. But he's not giving up on the idea of it happening here, but I don't think it's happening.
He said the right things. You know, there's so many scenarios that we could run through, but we're talking about him being under contract for 2 years. If they found some scenario here where they had somebody to put in front of him for 2 years that was on a 2-year plan, and he legitimately was behind that guy for the better part of 2 years and had a chance to emerge at the end of those 2 years. So if he sat for 24 games now, and then had a chance for 8 games or for 6 games at the end of that to really show you something from what he's talking, that would be kind of the scenario we talk about. Yep. Where a guy sits. Usually it's a change of scenery. But if Brian Callahan got it together and this team got on the good track, these are all seeming long shots now. But if Brian Callahan got it together, he got another quarterback in here who he could put his stamp on, and things were on the upswing, and Will Levis was sitting behind that and learning and watching. And then, could the reemergence conceivably happen here? I think it's highly unlikely, but it's not impossible.
Right.
So, that would be a best case scenario conceivably for them.
No doubt about it. Brian Callahan sounding off at his press conference yesterday as well. We'll get into that, play that audio for you. Well, we can of it coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode. Paul Karski in with us for the rest of this week. You're on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharsky, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Brian Callahan, interesting press conference yesterday. A lot of it about Will Levis, but Callahan was asked about the idea of his team being soft, both physically and mentally, which led to a Brian Callahan tirade yesterday at the press conference. Here's what the Titans head coach had to say when asked about his team being soft.
There are a lot of folks who think this team is soft physically and mentally. How would you respond to that idea?
I mean, you really want to get me going today? Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think it's complete and total bull, if you want my honest opinion. These guys are tough, man. They go after it every day. They play hard as hell. And there's at no point have we ever put on tape at any point this season that this is a soft football team. Like I can't even wrap my mind around how that would even be a conversation. I mean, just because we don't win games doesn't mean we're soft. These guys play their ass off. They play hard. They play physical. You can ask any team that plays against us that when they come off the field, they know they played us. Yeah, that makes me relatively angry that would be some presumption. That means you just don't watch the you don't do anything about it, that you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're looking at. So I'm not going to stand for anybody calling his football team soft. I think that's so. If there's opinions out there that feel that way, then they don't know anything about NFL football. So I'd like you to walk in there and call one of these guys soft and see what happens. This is not a soft football team at all, mentally or physically. And I think one of the things mentally that's really been impressive about the team is that the way that they keep fighting through the way that this season has gone. They've not shown at any point that they're not up to the task. They come out every day and work. They have. I mean, I'm really. You're gonna really get me going now. I mean, these guys come out here and they do everything possible to win games. And if there's any assumption anywhere that's outside of this building, again, we don't focus on all those things, but there's no possible explanation to say that this team is soft any way, shape, or form, mentally or physically. And the way that they go about their work it's insulting to me, to them, to everyone that works here. So I'm not that no chance ever in hell would I ever admit that to be the case, and neither would anybody in this locker room. So you can kind of shove that one right up your, to be honest.
So long answer there from Brian Callahan, where he was going on a tirade about the idea that his football team is soft. Obviously, PK, it generated a lot of reaction yesterday. You were there in person watching this all go down. Had a very interesting follow-up question after that as well. What did you make of Brian Callahan's response?
I'd say 11 times they've shown they're not up to the task.
I would agree.
I don't question their physical toughness, though. At some spots, I mean, Nick Petit-Frere is not tough.
No,
he's not tough. So you can't be insulted at the question about their toughness. And mentally, I don't think they're a tough football team. I don't think that's an insult. Look, you question a football team's toughness, or you suggest that they're soft, it automatically is going to set off that kind of reaction. But this all came out of Mike Herndon's column at paulkuharsky.com, where he said there's a certain softness to this team that hasn't been there in recent years. While players absolutely bear some responsibility there, it's often said that a team takes on the personality of its head coach. While I'm not saying Callahan is soft necessarily, he's certainly shown some fire on the sidelines at times this season. I do think his team's culture permits that softness to exist in ways that previously wasn't allowed to under Vrabel's leadership.
Yeah.
I'll also concede that Vrabel was perhaps sometimes too far on the other side of that spectrum, which can be a problem in its own right. But he gave two examples of the Titans seeming soft. And Nick, if we're ready for those, this is not the Titans seeming soft. This is the Titans saying soft things about themselves, starting with Peter Skoronski in late October, which is, I think, very relevant to the discussion. And I don't think Peter would change his tune on this. Let's hear what he said.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly haven't shown that so far. I think the whole team and offense especially is when adversity has hit. I think we've just kind of been like, oh, well, here we go. Like, And that's why we've been losing, really, is because we haven't really been able to bounce back from adversity. And I saw that in camp. I think we did a good job of that in camp when we would have some struggles or maybe a bad drive or bad play. I thought we'd bounce back a lot, and we got to get that back because that's really why we're losing games. We've been leading in every game and kind of just giving it away at whatever that inflection point was and not been able to bounce back.
Have they shown that they're able to bounce back in these losses?
I would say no.
So, I mean, that's a player basically saying that they're not mentally tough. Is anybody going to argue with the meaning of that?
I wouldn't think so.
So, I mean, that's in his own locker room, somebody saying that. And then I brought this up from Jarvis Brownlee. Listen closely. This is not, and I got some blowback from other reporters. This is not Jarvis Brownlee in Washington saying, I was cold. Listen to what Jarvis Brownlee is really saying here.
I think guys ain't come out playing fast enough. Like you said, we had a lot of turnovers in the first half, and that was down in the first quarter. So I don't think guys was locked in anymore. I think guys let the cold get to them. Because, I'm a Florida guy. I don't like the cold, but I know what comes with playing in this profession. And sometimes, you're going to have to play through things that you don't like. And I think guys let the cold affect them today. A lot of guys ain't going to say it, but that's what I think happened.
A lot of guys aren't going to say it, but I think that's what happened. He's not talking about himself. He's talking about the team. We're not locked in. I think guys let the cold get to them. You have to play through things you don't like. This isn't somebody yesterday said, well, Javon Curse didn't like the cold. You think he wasn't tough? That's not what he's saying. Now, later, Callahan said, well, I think he was making an excuse. And Brownlee, didn't want to comment any further on it. But in the moment, after a bad loss to Washington, when it was 40 degrees, which is not NFL cold, he said, we're not locked in. I think guys let the cold get to them. You have to play through things you don't like, which is saying they didn't play through things they don't like in a game where they were down 28 in 20 minutes. Does that sound mentally tough?
No.
I mean, that's fair. These are the two examples Mike Herndon used. I don't think that those two examples show a team that's mentally tough. And I don't know why there's any I understand why Brian Callahan's going to defend him, but I don't understand any media or fans jumping to defend their mental toughness.
Well, I agree with everything you just threw out there on that front. I do think we talked about this off air too. When somebody uses the word soft, I think that's going to generate a response pretty naturally to what you saw from Brian Callahan yesterday. Like when he started going into I would challenge you to go into the locker room, call any one of these guys soft, see what happens. It's like, okay, well, that's what these conversations generally devolve into. But it depends on what you're talking about with soft. Like, do I think that these guys, by and large, are physically just giant babies out there and soft? No, I don't.
No.
But the mental part of it is part of the game, right? Like
big part.
Fighting through when things don't go your way and being able to handle adversity is a part of playing NFL football. And they've had 7 games this year where they've lost by 10 or more points. Some of that is that they're not good enough. Some of that is they don't respond well when things start to go poorly and handle the mental side of the game properly that way. And then, I think the Brownlee example is a good example. Like he said it in his comments. Other guys on the team aren't going to say this, but this is my observation of what happened today out here is they had a tough time fighting through the cold.
And look, new teams oftentimes, unfortunately, too often with this team, when things change, it takes a while, right? So Peter's talking about at the inflection point, we don't respond well. Well, some teams, they don't respond well until they do respond well. And then there's kind of a moment that flips things. We haven't seen that moment. Callahan's certainly hoping for that moment. And they're all kind of waiting on that moment. Who's going to carry them at that moment? We don't know. We know who the primary candidates are and all of that, but that moment hasn't come. Now, a lot of fans just like that Callahan showed some fire there. He's showed fire before at certain moments in press situations. He certainly showed fire on the sidelines in a couple situations that have been well captured by the TV broadcast crew. But that felt a little performative. and I don't know that that's the greatest element. I think, he said, "Do you really want me to do this?" You didn't hear me off to the side said, "Yes, yeah,
Go
yes."
ahead.
But it's a clip that's well traveled. I
yeah.
knew while he was saying it would be well traveled. I got the Bleacher Report like, "Hey, permission to use this clip." So he knew what he was doing in the moment. It probably makes him look good to a certain segment that he needs to look good to.
Yeah.
But how much it really means, I don't know.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. So Brian Callahan sounding off yesterday at the press conference about the idea of the Titans being soft. What do you think? Hit us up. Give us a phone call, 615-737-1025. We'll have more reaction to that coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt women's basketball. Commodores taking on Dayton with a 6 o'clock tip-off. Pregame show beginning at 5:45. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 949thefan.com. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, taking your thoughts on the Titans, on Brian Callahan, his press conference yesterday. Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Ed in Jersey. Ed, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Edward.
Good morning, guys. PK, thank you for the bellowing or the verbose yes yesterday. That was the best part of that.
I didn't know if it was audible.
Rhetorical question. He asked a rhetorical question and it gets an answer. It's always funny. That was the best part of it. Anyway, this theory, and PK, I know you had posted to the contrary on this, but this theory out there that he's benching Levis because these next 3 games are going to mean his coaching future. Do you buy into that at all?
I buy that he certainly is looking for a chance to look better. And I don't want to say scapegoat Levis, but, can certainly maybe look better in these last 3 and be able to say, well, it was Levis. I think he's safe. I think everybody's safe. The indications I'm getting are that everybody's safe. But look, we know that Amy Adams Strunk makes some rash decisions, I think, weighted by particular moments. And I think if they're wearing their Oilers uniforms against Houston in the finale, if they go out and get pasted by Houston in the finale and she's got people whispering in her ear, the right people, can she go against everything that she's indicated to her people to this point in time?
Sure.
Absolutely she could.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing we've learned is you never know what's going to happen with this group. I mean, you bring it up. We brought up the Rossini report last year.
Right. That was
in November. Like by Thanksgiving, Mike Vrabel was coming back and was the coach. And by the time the second week of January rolls around, he's fired. So things could change in a hurry around here. Now, if it is that way, and her plan is to bring back Carthon and Callahan and this whole regime for another year, then that's her plan, and hopefully she's got the guns to stick to it at this point, if that's what she wants to do. As far as
if that's her plan, by the way, we may not hear from her at all.
We probably won't.
Probably won't.
Yeah. I mean, the recent history would tell you won't. So I would probably go ahead and prepare yourselves for that if you're Titans fans. The idea of switching to Rudolph to make himself look better or to save his job. Like I was talking about this with Rexrode. Like
that's some switch.
Like, Rudolph is the guy coming in here to say, like, to me, like if you're, and I'm trying to view all this through the lens of Amy Adams Strunk, like making this decision. Like if Mason Rudolph goes out there and they win 2 of their next 3, and by the way, they're playing Indianapolis, Jacksonville, and Houston. Indianapolis isn't good. Jacksonville is horrible. And Houston might have the division locked up by the time that rolls around. So that game could mean absolutely nothing to them. So I don't know how much we're going to learn about this team in general over the next 3 weeks. So I guess my point is, what really changes about the equation here if they go out and stumble into a win or 2 over the next 3 weeks? So I don't think a lot changes on that front. So I get it. In professional sports, as a head coach, it's better if you're doing some winning than losing all the time. I understand that. But I don't know if the equation of the overall picture of this changes at all over the next 3 weeks. They're 3-11 right now.
Yeah, in many ways, the story of the season is written. But, you are what your record says you are. I'm a believer in that, that the stakes aren't particularly high or the competition isn't particularly good. It's not their fault the way the schedule was organized. It's not their fault the rest of the division is bad. And, if they win a couple here, they get the record, to look a little bit better. Hurts them in the draft, obviously, which, if they were desiring one of those top quarterbacks is going to take them out of range. Not that they're in range now. But and I don't believe in the tanking stuff. I think they should go out and try to win. I think winning is important for guys like Latham and Sweat and Skoronski. And, we played that clip about Skoronski talking about the inflection points and them not getting over the hump at those points. And if they could get over the hump at those points in a couple games here, that would have meaning for the franchise. And I think there's great value in that. I'm not convinced that they can, but what if they did in 2 games here? To me, you have to consider the people you have before you start thinking about the people you are going to get.
Yeah, and look, we've seen Rudolph. Like we know what Rudolph is. So there's this idea out there, like, is this an audition for Rudolph?
That's great. They know
to be
exactly
the bridge quarterback for next year.
Exactly what he is.
Rudolph is not going to be the plan to be the quarterback next season. If so, then you probably need to move on from everybody right now. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. So, I look. One thing that's interesting about this, even Titans fans that I think are out on Levis and have been out on Levis, with 3 games left in the regular season, look at it as, oh, you're going to Mason Rudolph. So why exactly am I watching this team the next 3 weeks here? Like, it's been an interesting response, even from people who I know good and well are out on Will Levis, that they're making the switch to Rudolph at this point. Like, oh, good, Mason Rudolph the last 3 weeks. Give me some of that.
I think most people, a high percentage of people, would have rather have seen more Levis than Rudolph. Now, a share of those people are into them losing these 3 games.
That is true.
For draft position, though that seems to have quieted down some. I don't know if the tankers are just tired or if they've come to terms with the fact that Titans are going to try to win for what that's worth. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear from some pro tank people.
Yep, I would too. And they also, the other part of this is, the Titans are 3-11, and there are years, PK, where they would be pretty significantly either at the top or in the running for number 1 overall pick with that record. There's just so many bad teams.
Wrong year to be bad. It's the wrong year to need a quarterback.
Yeah.
When the Titans line things up, they have a bad sense of timing.
Yeah, they do. I mean, right now, Vegas is awful. The Giants are awful. New England, Jacksonville, Carolina. I know you're playing Jacksonville again this year, so maybe this picture changes a little bit. But, the Raiders have lost 10 games in a row. We think they're going to roll off a win at some point here. Like, the idea of them moving up to where they're like 1 or 2 or 3 overall, where you feel pretty good about, like, if you love Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, being able to get into that spot. Even with as bad as the Titans are right now, the odds are saying they're probably not going to get up that high.
Bottom of the league is really bad. And the Titans are about to play 2 other teams that are there, though Indianapolis record-wise, I guess, doesn't even qualify.
Yeah.
And they're bad.
They are.
So, you could take a minute. I know nobody has any sympathy for Indianapolis, but think of that fan base. That team is pretty much in tatters too. And, they're where the Titans end up if the Titans win a couple of these games. They're not drafted anywhere close to the top, and they need a hell of a lot too. They should be in a spot where they're finally firing their GM. I don't know about their coach, but Ballard should be at the end of his rope.
He has gotten a lot of run there. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll take more of your thoughts on the Titans. Also get to some big news for Vanderbilt that came out yesterday afternoon, and a trade that the Predators pulled off last night. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason at Twin Peaks in Madison this Sunday for the pregame show, 9:30 to 11:30. They'll break down the Titans' Week 16 matchup against the Colts, give you the latest updates before the game. Pregame show presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I am not looking for sympathy, but you get to this stage of this season, and it's college football games going on Saturday.
Yeah.
And during those, you're getting your butt to glorious Indianapolis.
Yes.
And then a week later, it's not like you're going to the beach in Jacksonville. I mean, those are not two of the star attraction cities on the Titans travel list. We go there every year.
Yeah.
But you'd like to spread them out, maybe take them away from the holidays. And it's not, I know most people are not fired up about the next 2 weeks of football.
I would agree.
I would say people who are traveling to the next 2 weeks of football could probably top that list.
Even less fired up.
Yeah. So my mom's in town. My mom is about to turn 90. She's visiting. My wife is a delight. She loves my mom.
Yeah.
She treats her great. But for me to say, hey, Mom, thanks for being here. I'm taking off for Indianapolis. It's again, I'm not looking for sympathy, but that's rough.
It is rough.
Hey, I'm back.
Hey.
But in a few days, I'm taking off for Jacksonville.
Jacksonville, they got that milky pool down there where you could go wade in the waters if you wanted to in the middle of the game.
If the temperature is right.
Live report, Paul Kuharski from the pool.
If the temperature is right, the windows in the Jacksonville press box fog up in a way that you can't see the pool.
Well,
or the field.
Well, when those two teams play, it may not be the worst thing.
One
Guys,
time
I can't see.
One time when I wasn't the earliest guy to the press box, there was a puddle that had dripped into my press box seat, and the fellas were kind enough to take a picture so that I could see what I could anticipate what was coming, because they knew how excited I would be to arrive and set up my laptop in a puddle. Fortunately, there's a lot of room because there's not that much media there, so I was able to relocate.
Make some adjustments. Rexrode has talked about, I don't know if this is still the case or not, but the Jacksonville press conference, the men's room, like when you're going to the bathroom, there's the urinal, there's no divider, and there's the sink right next to it. So, I mean, you're just in there. Wow. You're washing your hands, and the sink is right there, and the urinal and the sink pretty close together. No divider.
That's
true. It's a tough one.
That's true. Look, I'm in and out of the bathroom. I'm not in there studying things like Rexrode.
Apparently he does.
Rexrode
he takes inventory.
Drawing up a plan, like a criminal planning on coming in through the roof. That's not me. I just go, do my business, wash my hands, get out. Yeah. I'm not studying the schematics.
I think he broke down every square inch.
Yeah.
Of the Jacksonville press box bathroom.
While he was eating his lunch in there.
You have to take some notes.
Double duty. They used to have a chocolate
sandwich.
They used to have a chocolate fountain in Jacksonville, which really offset a lot of things. It's like a chocolate fondue fountain.
And that's no longer
offset a lot of things, but it's been a while. Somebody sent me a text. When's the last time we saw that chocolate fountain?
BK, some good news for Vanderbilt yesterday. Diego Pavia, for the moment, going to be allowed to play in 2025. So Pavia's eligibility was up, and he was suing the NCAA for violating an antitrust law, basically because that he played some junior college seasons, and he argued that the junior college seasons towards NCAA eligibility was a violation of the antitrust law, and it prohibits him from earning NIL numbers. So I didn't know
which is a strong argument.
Yeah, I would agree. I didn't know exactly how this was going to play out because we've not seen anybody do this yet. Now, granted, pretty much everything that you sue the NCAA for right now, people are winning. Like, they're winning against the NCAA. Judge William Campbell has ruled that he's allowed to come back and play for another season. The NCAA still does have the ability to challenge the court's injunction. But it looks like Diego Pavia going to be back playing football for Vanderbilt next year, which is obviously a huge deal for them. He was
huge deal for them. Huge deal for him. Nice precedent setter. I imagine there are other guys who have come up in similar fashion. We know many previously, or the NIL era is relatively new, so you can't say too many guys have lost out on this setup, but some have certainly, who are kicking themselves for not having done this. So they're probably not as prominent as he's been. Good for him, and great for Vanderbilt. I don't know if there's an appeal to be had by the NCAA. I didn't. There was no mention of that in what I read of this.
I think they might have the ability to, but I mean,
why?
honestly, at this point, they
just let
lose
it
every
go.
time. You might as well just let it go. I mean,
Yeah.
it looks like they're going to be on the losing end of most of these lawsuits.
And so terrific job by him, and that bodes really well for Vanderbilt. I mean, their schedule next year is just absolutely brutal.
Yep.
They play everybody, and they play everybody on the road. So, it's going to be hard for them to match what they did this year, but he is such a wild card. On a good Saturday, he can give you a chance in a lot of ways to scramble things up in a league that there's a lot more parity than anybody expected.
Yep.
And I think you go forward with Vanderbilt, a lot of SEC people are less likely to blow off a Vanderbilt game than they've been in a long, long time because of the dynamic that he brings.
Yeah.
And they get a second year of that, which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's great news for Vanderbilt. It's great news for Clark Lee. And look, there's a lot of things you could point to for their year this year and turning things around. And Clark Lee deserves a lot of credit for basically being willing to change up everything he was doing and make some adjustments that way. But it starts with Pavia, like his ability, his fire, his ability to rise to the occasion in the big moment, I think was a big part of what they were able to do this year. So big news for him. Preds make a trade last night, sending Alex Carrier to the Montreal Canadiens. They get back Justin Barron, who was a first-round pick in 2020 by Montreal. Carrier signed a deal this offseason, signed a 3-year contract, and after 32 games played this year for the Preds, he is on his way back to Montreal. Probably exciting for him in some ways. He's from that area in Quebec, so I'm sure Montreal be a big deal to him going back and playing there. But my initial take on this, the Predators have had some injuries that have piled up with their defensemen, Carrier being one of them. He got hit in the head last week and has been out. He's been back on the ice, kind of working his way back through things the last few days. But in the meantime, they've had some of their younger players come in and fill in roles on defense. And one of them in particular has done an outstanding job. Adam Wilsby has come in. He got his first NHL goal the other night. He's been really good defensively. And I can't help but wonder if Barry Trotz and the Preds looked at this and said, all right, we've got a lot of long-term contracts. Carrier just signed a deal. It's not an overly expensive deal, but if you trade him away, you can save about $1.5 million against the cap. Why not just go do that? And they made the swap, bring in Barron, and I think Adam Wilsby going to be an everyday NHL player. So, PK, not very often in sports you see somebody get signed to a 3-year contract in the offseason, and then less than halfway through the next season they're traded away. But that's what the Predators have done here.
They signed some people to some big contracts. I mean, is this the beginning of them trying to be more financially conservative?
Yeah.
Is the question to me.
Could be. And trying to create some room potentially to make a move down the pipe here. I still think they need to, at some point here, they're going to have to address center ice, either for the now or for the long-term future. Like they need serious help there. So clearing up some cap space, maybe for Barry Trotz to do that coming up. By the way, Barry Trotz will speak today at 10:10, right before the Predators take on the Penguins tonight in their morning skate later today. Andrew Burnett will be with us on the program here in about 30 minutes at 7:30. So looking forward to that. Coming up next, PK did a dive this week into the roster for the Titans, taking a look at Rand Carthon, what he inherited, what's there now. What did we learn from this, and what does it say about the job that Rand Carthon has done? We'll get into that coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Predators head coach Andrew Brunette will be with us coming up at 7:30. We'll get his thoughts on the Alex Carrier trade and the matchup tonight against Pittsburgh. That coming up a little bit later this hour. Taking your thoughts at the moment, 615-737-1025 on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. PK, we've had a lot of discussion here in the last couple of weeks. I'm sure we will in the coming weeks about the job of Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, Brian Callahan, and what the future looks like for the Titans organization. You've done a piece at paulkuharski.com where you're taking a look at the roster that the Titans have now that Rand Carthon has constructed versus what he inherited when he started with the Titans. It's a very fascinating piece to look at when it's kind of laid out in front of you. I encourage people to check it out at paulkuharski.com. And basically, you're going through each position group here, and you're determining, are they in better shape now? Are they in worse shape now? Is it relatively the same based on the position groups that you've put together here? What did you find? What did you learn about the job that Rand Carthon has done as you were putting this together?
Well, I would have said at the beginning of the season the roster was significantly better. I think now not as much better as I expected, and not as much better as it should be. Now, if you look, I mean, clearly wide receiver, they've done a good job at getting better. And, DeAndre Hopkins came in and they got, I think, 23 games out of him, which was good. And then got a 4th-round pick for him, or 5th-round pick for him. So, that factors in as well. But they're better at wide receiver than they've been in some time. They're better at cornerback, even with Snead being on the shelf and Awuzie having missed a lot. Brownlee is a hit. Baker was a good pickup.
Yep.
The depth there has been really good. And look, the offensive line is still a big problem. But at tackle, they're slightly better. That season was Taylor Lewan getting hurt, a better version of Nick Petit-Frere, Dennis Daly, who was a disaster, LaRaven Clark and Jamarco Jones were on that team. Now you have Latham, who's struggling now, but I think most people see a bright future there. A much worse version of Petit-Frere, a Jokwu and Jalen Duncan, who's hurt. You'd take that group for sure over the last group. Guards, the starting guards were Nate Davis and Aaron Brewer, and Nate Davis was dinged up and not real anxious to play through it in a contract year.
Yep.
Now you have Skronsky and Radens. You would take these starting guards, better, but still needs work, right? Centers, then Ben Jones, who was in his last year, and he was all kinds of dinged up. You remember Vrabel's hug with him in the tunnel.
Yep.
And now you have Lloyd Cushenberry, who's out, but Daniel Brunskill's far better depth now than Corey Levin was then. Corey Levin's 3rd now. He was 2nd then. So all of that is better, but it's not better enough, right? 2 years into this, you would think that they would have addressed things in a stronger way.
Yeah.
But a lot of other positions you can say worse. I mean, defensive line, the depth isn't as good as it was when they had Simmons and Autry and DeMarcus Walker and Mario Edwards and Tierre Tart and Naquan Jones. That's a pretty deep group there as compared to what they have now, I would say. Inside linebackers, David Long was a good player when he was here, and he covered better than anybody they have, I would argue. And they've spent a lot of resources there. Now, maybe some of the young guys get better, and that takes a turn, but I would argue they're worse there. Outside linebackers were a mess both times, but, Landry was out that year. I'd say worse by a little bit. Safeties, Hooker and Diggs were pretty good, but end of the road, Byard and Hooker, I'd take, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Cornerback's much better now, as we said. Punter, I think Ryan Stonehouse has been made worse. 6 yards net average worse because of the decisions that they've made on the coverage.
I was not aware of that stat until you threw that out there yesterday. And people may think, 6 yards. 6 yards is a significant difference in terms of your net that you're generating out there.
They made a really bad judgment on what they've done with regard to keeping special teamers. And that's a fundamental roster building area. When you're limited in what you can do with the number of picks you have, back end stuff, you've got to do better with the back end of the roster. Now, they've made adjustments as the season gone on. When they first brought in Worley, he was for special teams, right? And some of the other veterans they've brought in, Justin Hardy, for those roles. But those guys are late arrivals considering the problems that they had and the games that they cost themselves with some special teams stuff. So I think, look, I think it's pretty unanimous that the free agent class, maybe we liked a lot of those moves when they made them, and that's fine. But how they pan out is the story, and they have to project better than they projected on a lot of those guys. Calvin Ridley came in, looking like a 1 or sold as a 1, and he's really more of a 2. And you can't say he checked all the boxes and have a 3-win team through 14 games.
So PK's laid it out there. He's laid out the job that Carthon has done just in terms of the roster, the way things are constructed, the position groups. What does it tell us about his ability to do this job moving forward? We'll get into that coming up next. Predators head coach Andrew Brunette will be with us at 7:30. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Paul Kuharski with us for not only the rest of this program, the rest of the week. Rexrode calling it quits this week. Kuharski's in.
He's out.
Doing a bang-up job. We got some, I was going to say tickets. It's not a ticket. We do have a gift card to give away. A $100 gift card for a Moment's Peace located at 9050 Carruthers Parkway in Franklin. Be caller number 5, and you'll also be qualified to win the grand prize of a $1,000 Genesis Diamonds gift card as well. As part of our 12 Days of Christmas, caller 5-615-737-1035 will win a $100 gift card for a Moment's Peace. So, PK, you've laid it out there with the roster, the moves that Carthon has made, which position groups are in better shape than they were when they took over, which groups are in worse shape than they were when he took over as general manager. So my question to you is, based on what you've seen, what you know of Rand Carthon, and assuming that what you've thrown out there a couple times with us on the program ends up playing out, and that is that everybody's back next season, Carthon, Brinker, Callahan. What have we learned about Carthon, his ability to do this job, and his ability to fix this moving forward? Because that's the only thing I care about right now if I'm a Titans fan. How do you fix this? Who's going to fix this moving forward? What do you make of the ability of Carthon to do that based on what you've seen?
Well, everybody's going to say that first draft is we don't know how much credit or blame he gets for it. Look, the biggest thing there was the Levis pick. I'll say again, my understanding is everybody was on board with the Levis pick at that stage. So he shares equal credit and equal blame in that. And if he wasn't involved in the rest of the guys, and he certainly was, I mean, he immediately defended Spears very strongly on the knee stuff, right? I mean, you can, if you want to say he wasn't in on Skoronski or in on whoever in that draft, then you should be critical of his willingness to take a back seat to the head coach.
Yeah.
Like, you're a new GM. You took over the scouting staff. Why are you so willing to let the head coach, manhandle you in terms of picks? Second draft, he's in complete control. It looks like a good draft, though. Latham has struggled lately. Sweat is not consistently a presence in the backfield in the pass rush game. So you'd like to be able to say more about those two guys at this stage.
Heck of a stiff arm, though.
Though I think, yes. And though I think most people would say they look like they will pan out to be very good players. Are they stars? Are they, straight up guys who are going to be the kind of superstars you need at the top of the draft? I don't know that you're going to get that out of them. Brownlee, very nice pick. Jaquan Jackson, headed for bust-terrific. So, do we have enough evidence on Rand Carthon and what he can do yet? I would say no, which is why I would say you're probably going to see them stick with him. But, he can't claim that the Titans are bad 5 games into the season because of ball luck.
No.
That sounds like a guy that doesn't have a realistic handle on what his team is and what's going on with it. He's going to speak after the season's over here, I expect. And we need to hear some real analysis of his huge free agent class and the status of this team. And it can't be all smiles and giggles.
Well, one thing I'm really interested to hear about after the year, what does it look like for Snead in the future? Because bottom line is they were the ones that were willing to go do this. They were the ones that were willing to go make this trade when clearly other teams were hesitant to do so with L'Jarius Snead. I realize that he's dealing with a quad right now, and it's not the knee per se that we're talking about here. So it's a different injury. Okay. What does that mean for his availability as they move forward here? That's a big part. Like, to me, that's a Rand Carthon decision that's going to weigh heavily into what happens here. Here's the other thing. And we can do the hand-wringing back and forth of whether or not he deserves to come back for a third year and be the general manager. but let's say just for the sake of this discussion that he is. One thing that you brought up constantly throughout the year that I think is a great point and something to keep in mind here. There's still a lot of holes here to fix, as you've laid out here with the roster. What's the likelihood that they can do all of that in one offseason? Like, what's the likelihood that you can fix all of these holes to a level that is satisfactory enough where you're able to take a significant jump forward next year and be a team that is competitive? Obviously, now you're throwing quarterback on top of that too. So you're adding quarterback to a list that's already long at edge rusher and wide receiver and tackle and all these other positions that you want to throw out there. So what's the likelihood that you can fix this in one offseason? You brought it up. I mean, they spent a ton of money this offseason, and you knew heading into it. I mean, traditional history in the NFL tells you when you're making a lot of moves, some of them work out pretty nicely, and some of them are total failures. And they still have a lot of moves left to make this offseason. And I think we know, sitting here today, PK, on December 19th, of the moves they make this offseason, some probably work out pretty nicely. Some of them won't. Like, they're not going to be able to fix everything this offseason.
Yeah, let's narrow that. Let's just say, what are the odds in one offseason they become a very good pass protecting team and a very good pass rushing team?
Pretty low.
Two things that they very much are not right now.
It's pretty low.
All right. The quarterback change will probably help the pass protection. Will Levis definitely did not help the pass protection.
No doubt.
Right. Mason Rudolph in these last 3 games will help the sack numbers. But the right tackle and the right guard are going to be changed. So what are the odds you do great there? And, and then you need Latham to continue to grow. And then, edge is a real problem. Key is very up and down. He's got 1 more year left. Landry is really faded. I know he might wind up with 10 here, but they're very independent moments, separate of sometimes you have a 10 sack guy and you go, well, he had 10 and then, could have had 20. I feel like Landry might have 10 and he could have had 4.
Yeah, he's got 8 sacks right now, and it doesn't feel like he's been overly impactful.
Yeah, Brandon Thorne, who kind of rates all sacks, rates one of those sacks as like an elite level sack. Now, sacks are sacks. I'm not discounting them,
right.
But when you're cleaning things up as opposed to whipping your guy and getting straight to the quarterback, those are different levels of pass rushing. Titans have ignored this position far too long. I don't really understand the rationale for that because they've not, they had a stretch there where they lined up 4 with Autry and Landry and Simmons as the key 3 and had some success. But they've got to fix those 2 in the issues in the trenches to get to be a good football team. And can they fix that in one off season? You can if you make really good selections, but they don't have a 3rd round pick.
Yep.
It's not going to be a ton to offer in free agency. Are you going to step out and go get a guy like Zach Martin, who's an older free agent, but has worked with Bill Callahan in the past and has been an elite guard, and then is that guy going to come here and be a healthy stalwart as he's been? Or is he going to come here and twist an ankle? These are all reasonable questions. But yeah, a year after there was a lot to fix and they spent a ton of money to bring in a ton of bodies. You need all of those people to do better than they did in their first season with the Titans, particularly somebody like Snead.
Yep.
And then you need another class, but between rookies and veterans to do the same. It's a big ask.
And by the way, you got to find a quarterback and all that too.
Yeah.
So you've just added another need to that as well.
The
615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we'll be joined by Predators coach Andrew Brunette. Preds make a trade last night, sending Alex Carrier to Montreal. We'll get his thoughts on that. Preds and taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight. Andrew Brunette up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. Preds coming off a win, a shutout win on Tuesday. They'll be looking for another one tonight, and to help us talk more about that, we head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, and welcome in Predators head coach Andrew Brunette. Andrew, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, fellas. Doing good.
Are you a big Christmas guy, big festive guy? Do you listen to Christmas music? What's this time of year like for you?
I mean, I try to. My wife hates it, so I usually get shut off pretty quick. But no, I love it. I'm a big Christmas guy. Obviously, over the last course of probably since COVID, it's been a little bit less. I love the socializing, the family thing, and yeah, it's been a little bit less the last few years. Obviously, moving around. But yeah, no, I love this time of year. I love Christmas music. I love just getting out, walking around, seeing the lights and all those things.
But the headline is Mrs. Brunette is a Scrooge.
Well, we have matching sweatshirts, and that's what she has.
Nice. I love it. So, Andrew, a late-night trade last night. Alex Carrier to Montreal. You get Justin Barron back, a former first-round pick from 2020. Just kind of what went into that decision to move Carrier, and what do you make of kind of the way your defense is structured right now?
Well, obviously, where we're at this year, Justin's a guy that organizationally we've had our eyes on for quite a while. I know through last year he's a profile we were kind of looking for. So I've heard his name numerous times. Somebody they were very excited about getting, especially, 6'2", defenseman that moves well. And, with Carr, he's been a great teammate, great player here for us for the time I'm here. And I just think where we were this year. And unfortunately, we had to expedite the process here a little bit.
What has the change of Stamkos back to center or to center after a long time on the wing done for you, and what kind of effect have you seen on the other guys out of that?
Well, I think it's freed him up a little bit. Stammer's still a really good skater. And I think for him to kind of get accustomed, he was, playing the wing for quite a while in Tampa. And I think playing here is a little bit different. Obviously, through the middle of the ice, we're built a little different than Tampa was. So I think he felt a little bit better. He had the puck a lot more. He's skating a lot more. I think the way we play, he's getting himself in positions to be a little bit free, with odd man rushes. Is something going to breakaway the other night. So I think for our group, he's really kind of solidified down the middle the way he's playing. We've had a hard time finding guys to play with, certain guys through the middle of the ice. We've had some centers that, didn't really step it up and kind of fit into that role. So he fit in, and I think it makes us a better team, especially if he continues to play this way. I mean, I think him, Phil, and Marchie have been really good together. Kind of the chemistry we've been looking for this first 25, 30 games here. And, with O'Reilly, he plays good with everybody. So it's good to get that line going. And then you have, Novi, Vanch, they've got really good chemistry. So it's starting to sort of come together line-wise, chemistry-wise. It's been a process for sure, to say the least. And then, I think Big Max's and Smitty, those are, some of their best games here last few. So they're kind of excited that hopefully we have something that sticks here for a while.
So you brought up, Stamkos and the speed that he's got. I'll admit, Andrew, like, I've watched him, and I'll be watching him come up to the middle of the ice. I'm like, man, he is flying out there. And then you go look at some of the numbers, and, he's got, burst of over 24 miles an hour. I think he's like third in the league right now in max burst that he's had this year. Have you even been a little bit surprised at how well he's skating right now since he's moved to center ice?
For sure. I feel exactly the same way. I got that. I saw that on somewhere or another. Somebody sent it. I'm like, really? That number is pretty, it was like in the top in the league. Yeah, I think he, with him, playing with, with the centers that he's played with the Point and Sorelli, I think he, playing left wing, there's probably a little less skating, especially when you have those two guys that carried up the ice with a lot of speed. And you kind of forget how well he can skate. It kind of reminded me when he first kind of came in, when he did play center and he was skating through the middle of the ice. And that was one of his attributes. And I think as their team, got into the deep through the middle of the ice, he kind of fell into not even fell in, but moved into the wing spot. And you don't really see him quite skating as, because he's not quite the freedom coming through the middle of the ice full speed. And now you see him with the puck, you see him come through and you're like, wow, it almost turned back the time a little bit on him. And that's kind of what I remember him a little bit when he broke in the league. So it's been really good for our club. Obviously, we've had trouble with that center ice position, filling in the top two lines. And, he's been real good since we put him there. So as a coach, you're excited to see him move the way he is, and it seems like he's enjoying it a little bit more.
So going back to the Carrier thing, you mentioned, where you guys are at right now organizationally and that factoring into decisions. I have to wonder too, like how much of this is also seeing what Adam Wilsby has done and the way that he's played and thinking, man, that guy is an NHL player, and it doesn't look to me like he's going anywhere anytime soon. I've been really impressed with what I've seen from him.
Yeah, he's been great. I think he's come up. Obviously, it's a small sample size. You're always a little bit weary. I've liked him since I've seen him, 2 years ago in camp, a year and a half ago in camp. And just the way he moved, I think the way we play with his feet and how he's able to close space and gap up and swing in and all those things that we value in the way we play. To see him, and then down with Carl and his group and how he's developed, and seen him in camp this year. I was with Joel Quenneville, came to our camp for a day or two, and we were just kind of watching. And he's got an unbelievable eye for defensemen and the way the game's played now. And he saw Wilsby and he said, "Who's this guy? I like this guy." So it's kind of funny he said that and didn't even talk about him. He goes, "This kid will play," and I was like kind of interested. Obviously I really liked him, but it was interesting he picked up on it so quick. So
yeah.
He's been really good. And then Blankenberg's come up and he's played, in that role. He's played really well for us. Seems to maybe with Brady Shaler developing a little chemistry right now. So yeah, I think with Carr, he's been, like I said, he's been such a big clog in our group since I've been here. I think the profile we're getting, we don't have a lot of those 6'2", 6'3" defensemen coming. So I think with Justin, he fits that. Obviously, being a highly touted defenseman coming through the system through Colorado into Montreal, and the history of how Todd and the Predators have developed defensemen. I think we're excited to see if we can change the profile. And at the same time, sad to see Cargill, but unfortunately in our business and how our start, kind of started here this year, the organization kind of picked up that process here a little bit.
Might this trade tell us anything about where you might be heading in the coming weeks or months?
I think in hockey, it's day to day, and especially in the NHL right now. I think this is somebody, the trade was somebody that the organization had targeted. I thought we were going to get him last year. So I think it was somebody that they were very excited about that came along. I don't think it changes our day-to-day attitude. We still believe in this group. These other kids have stepped up also, and maybe made them a little bit more expendable. And then obviously with Lowe's and Yo's hopefully coming back, you kind of, your decor is pretty deep. So I don't think it's changed anything. We still, again, believe in this group. I think the way we played the last 3 games, and even if you knock out a few games on the road, the probably 8 of the last 10, I've really liked our hockey game, how we played. And a lot of those, when you play that way, usually you win 2-3, and you never know when you start winning 2-3 what happens. And it's shown in our league the last few years that different from so many different years that teams have kind of gone on runs both ways. So we just want to stay in the mix. We're day to day. We got a big game today, and we'll deal with what happens after.
So, Andrew, you talked the other day about, Svechkov going back down to Milwaukee, that being kind of a part of the plan here to give him a taste at the NHL, see what he's got, and then, go down to Milwaukee, season his game a little bit more. It wasn't perfect, obviously, but I was pretty impressed by what I saw from him. Got a really good shot, can skate pretty well for a guy his size, and you were pretty complimentary of him the other day. So just what did you see from Svechkov during his time here and kind of building out long-term here when you're talking about him as a first-round pick? LaRue's been up as a first-round pick, has been playing really well for you guys. How do you kind of view, I guess, those two, the job that they've done and what that can mean for your group moving forward here in the future?
Well, with Svech, you're really excited. And ever since you've seen him, a year and a half I've been here, I've been really excited to see him. And understand, obviously being on the other side, understand, the process of developing, the process of playing big minutes in the American League on the power play and the penalty kill, and then getting a little taste in the NHL. And I saw, really, which I love, his pace up through the middle of the ice. I think that's something we the way the game's played now. I think that is such an important part of how you build a team. And he's coming through the ice full speed. He's got great hands. He's got good vision. He's very reliable defensively. I think he's got a little bit more offense to give, but he'll figure that out for sure. But no, he's an exciting player. And then his profile of being 6'2" and strong. I mean, you're really excited. I, of course, jealous, selfishly love to keep him, but big picture and the best for the kid is get a little taste, go down, play big minutes, do your thing down there, and you'll be back up and you'll be better for it. And then with Zach, I think Zach's earned everything he's got this year, right from camp. I thought he was one of our best players in camp. He went, he went down for a little bit, got his opportunity, started on the fourth line, proved to us that he had a little bit of that checking mentality, can be reliable, is strong on pucks. And then he moved himself up the lineup where he's penalty killing, he's on the power play, and he's playing on the second line right now. And the key for all those young kids is earning it. And then when you get yourself up there is to stay. So I think he's in that process. But he's very, I would say, instincts for the game are very high. His competes very high. I love that he's got that ability to hound pucks. And I think with our group, we need a few more of those guys, and he's stepped up and taken that role.
Yep, no doubt about it. Well, Andrew, really appreciate your time as always. Looking forward to the game tonight against Pittsburgh. Merry Christmas to you and the family, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good luck.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, guys. Happy holidays.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Andrew Burnett, our guest here on Robby and Rexrode. Preds in action tonight, taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Puck drop at 7 o'clock, pregame at 6 o'clock here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The Rob Rant coming up next. And PK,
bring it.
I just read something that I almost can't believe is real. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Don't make me angry.
Sometimes you have to tell someone to pound sand.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
We're vibing, Robby.
Hey, Robby. Still vibing, kid?
I am a damn genius.
The Cheez-It Bowl chose us. They could have chose a lot of people, but they chose us, and that means something.
You guys have officially made me lose my marbles!
It's that time of the day. Time for the Rob Rant here on Robby and Rexrode. I think Paul Karsk would agree. Better than the Rex Rant. We'll at least go that route. We'll see.
I mean, whose rants aren't better than the Rex rants? that aren't really rants. Hey, let me say, everyone, it's high school football season. Let's be nice to the officials. Remember, they're just kids.
Better watch out. You start talking about his rants too much, the face gets red. He gets mad. Starts yelling.
Gets ruddy.
Yeah.
It brings on gout.
All right, so I read this on Twitter. I saw it first from Trey Wingo, who put it out there kind of as a screenshot of it. And I had to do some investigation to make sure that this was actually a real thing. And it is. This is at theathletic.com right now. Zach Rosenblatt, Michael Silver, Diana Rossini kind of working together on this story. Here's the first sentence from it, and I'll go into a little bit more detail. The New York Jets were nearing the finish line on a deal to acquire wide receiver Jerry Jeudy from the Denver Broncos last offseason. But the trade fell apart when Jets owner Woody Johnson nixed the idea over Judy's player rating in the Madden NFL video game, according to multiple team and league sources. So they put together kind of a couple different things on this, and they go into more detail about this, talking about Douglas and the Broncos in discussions, Joe Douglas, who has since been fired by the Jets, in deep negotiations for a trade that would have sent Jerry Jeudy to the Jets and given future Hall of Fame quarterback Aaron Rodgers another potential playmaker. The Broncos felt like a deal was near, then abruptly it all fell apart. Douglas told the Broncos that Johnson didn't want to make the trade because the owner felt that Judy's player rating in Madden wasn't high enough, according to multiple league sources. The Broncos ultimately traded the receiver to the Cleveland Browns. Last Sunday, Jeudy crossed the 1,000-yard mark for the first time in his career. And according to Rossini and Rosenblatt and Michael Silver, who put this together, not the first time that Madden has been involved here. Says the owner, Woody Johnson, pushed back on signing free agent guard John Simpson in the offseason due to his awareness rating in the video game. The Jets signed Simpson anyway, and he's had a solid season. So Woody Johnson, apparently, PK, using Madden to evaluate some of the personnel decisions that the team has made. What an absolute train wreck that place is. What an absolute train wreck of an owner Woody Johnson is. If this is true, and by the way, these are credible reporters here putting this out there, of the idea that nixing a trade of Jerry Jeudy over a freaking Madden game. I've never seen anything like this in professional sports.
Joe and Robert are providing some excellent information about what went down in New York. I mean, that's where this stuff is coming from,
yes.
Right?
Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh. Yeah.
Woody Johnson is not a young man.
No.
I'm not picturing him going back to the mansion and grabbing a PS5 and hitting Madden. Are you?
I'm not.
He's probably got a young son, grandson, I'm thinking, feeding him Madden numbers.
Yep. They bring that up ridiculous, in this article.
But this is an Adam Sandler movie type thing.
This is wild. It got me thinking, because you brought this up during the break when we were talking about this. Can you imagine Mike Vrabel like taking the Jets job and they're wanting to go acquire someone? Let's say the dynamic duo is back. It's John Robinson, Mike Vrabel. Robinson just interviewed with the Jets, which I don't think will happen, by the way, but let's just say it does. And they want to go sign whoever. And Woody Johnson looks at them and says, guys, no, like we can't do that. They're Madden rating. Like the awareness level is at 75. It should be at 90. I'm not taking anybody whose awareness ratings under 90 in Madden. Like, can you imagine
what's a good awareness rate? I'm not imagining
80 or above, probably. You imagine Mike Vrabel having that conversation with Woody Johnson? Like, are you kidding me?
Talk about Rexrode turning red.
My goodness. I couldn't believe this was real when I read it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, what's interesting is that we're at a time where we learn more about dysfunctional ownership, I think. We're at the all-time peak of information about dysfunctional ownership, right? We've heard more about Cleveland ownership and Deshaun Watson's contract. We're learning about the Johnsons. We've heard plenty about the things that forced Daniel Snyder out in Washington. I think people are more willing to leak things that tell us why their jobs are so difficult or were so difficult after they're out. But it used to just be this is my perception. It used to just be like, oh, those guys are really difficult to work for. And now it's, oh, those guys are really difficult to work for, and here's why.
Yeah, they're complete morons.
Like what was the guy in Houston, Easterby?
Yes, Jack Easterby.
All right, we got a lot of insight into what exactly Easterby was doing, like big stories written.
Yeah.
Well, that was Bob McNair's guy, right? For a while, who put him in position to do that. And so we found out, here's Bob McNair's guy and what he's doing. And so we get bigger glimpses into what bad ownership is doing and allowing and relying on. And I think it's great. If you're a fan of one of those teams, it's great on the one hand. On the other hand, I think maybe you'd rather be blind to it.
Yeah.
And you'd rather be a Packers fan. You're wearing your Packers hat. You'd rather not know some of this stuff. Or you'd rather be a team that's publicly owned and doesn't have anybody that could be an idiot on this level.
I want to read you the last part of this story here. This is unbelievable. To some, the reference on the video game ratings is a sign of Johnson allowing his teenage sons, Brick and Jack, to influence the franchise.
Brick.
Quote, when we're discussing things, you'll hear Woody cite something that Brick or Jack read online that's being weighed equally against whatever opinion someone else in the department has. This coming from a Jets executive. Current and former players and coaches have also said that Brick and Jack have brought friends, male and female, into the locker room where Woody Johnson, his wife, and his sons have criticized players. In another instance, on Halloween night this season, Rodgers entered the locker room with a game ball prepared to be given to interim coach Jeff Ulbrich, who just recorded his first win. Instead, Brick Johnson took it upon himself to award a game ball to wide receiver Garrett Wilson. Woody Johnson then gave Ulbrich the ball Rodgers had been holding. Multiple players said the energy felt drained out of the room. Quote, it was the most awkward, cringeworthy, brutal experience. This is from a player with the Jets. Things going swimmingly up there.
Yeah, this is a problem of family getting involved. And there's a little bit of this in Nashville. There's a little bit of this in Nashville with Amy Adams Strunk's soon-to-be son-in-law, who's risen up the ranks in the Titans front office without a great deal of experience, who has clout in the organization. Now he's not a kid playing video games.
That's good.
Yeah, I think he works hard at what he does, but is his influence disproportionate to his experience? It has been. I don't know if it is now or will continue to be, but it has been.
This is wild stuff. I mean, Titans got a lot of problems. Hopefully it never looks anything quite like this. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll take your reaction to this story from the New York Jets that we've just discussed. We'll get back into the Titans coming up next as well. Take your questions for PK on that front. Give us a call, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Paul Kuharski, Nick Keyser here with you on this Thursday morning. By the way, normally joined by Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports at this time on Thursday morning. He will be with us tomorrow at 7:30. So some scheduling stuff.
He needed some extra time to prepare for my questioning.
He was very excited about having you on the show.
Well, he wants me to do a Rexrode impersonation, which is difficult to ask.
It is a difficult task.
But I mean, Indiana. See,
that's pretty good.
That's all I got so far. Well, Nolensville football is the coach is great. My kid's got 4 concussions, but it's been a good year.
Big fan of Gout.
Yeah. So, my patella fell apart walking up the stairs. But I went to get booze and I saw Kuharski and I wasn't limping.
Off to a good start. Looking forward to this impression tomorrow when Charles Robinson joins us at 7:30. So we'll have him on the program tomorrow. Taking your thoughts for PK on the Titans, 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. Chef Rand on YouTube.
Chef.
Would you trade Roger McCreary now that Brownlee has emerged? Could probably get a 3rd rounder for him. I'm just guessing on that, though.
This is a problem with a lot of trade suggestions. When the Titans get a deep, good position, people want to immediately get rid of the depth. So Titans, look at what happened to the Titans at corner this year. Snead has disappeared. Owuzie missed 9 games. And so McCreary steadily manned the slot. And then you had Brownlee and Baker. Brownlee very good, Baker pretty solid, and they survived because of the depth. So as soon as you see depth, don't think trade, think finally a complete position. Finally a complete position. So at corner, they don't have to do anything this offseason. That's one position where you can say the Titans are fine. Hallelujah. Now let's get to 2 positions where they don't have to do anything, and then try 3 positions, and so on and so on.
So the quarterback position going to be one of those things that they have to address. Brian Callahan discussing yesterday his decision to move on to Mason Rudolph for the remainder of this year. Will Levis asked about going to the bench on Sunday and now moving forward for the rest of this season, what that means for him, what that means for his career and his approach. Here's what Will Levis had to say on that front yesterday.
I think that's the end of the conversation. I still believe that I can be a franchise quarterback for this team. I have the utmost confidence in myself and my ability to lead any team in this league. And I think that this year was great development for me, and I think that I truly did improve. And sure as heck don't want to go out like that. And I know that there's a positive future for me, whether it's here or somewhere else. And I just got to have the conversations I need to here, and hopefully I can show and prove that I can still be the guy.
So let me ask you, based on what you've seen from Levis, what is best case scenario for him that's realistic for his career moving forward here?
It's funny. I mean, best case scenario for Will Levis is best case scenario for everybody. He gets on a team that's got a great offensive line and a great play calling coach and great weapons and a great defense that's going to get him the ball in advantageous field position, that's going to protect him, that's going to let him do what he does best, which is like the 3-game stretch after he came back from the shoulder that let him throw for over 9 yards per attempt, which is otherworldly. Like I can't remember who's number 1 in the league, but the number 1 season number per attempt is 8. And if he's throwing for 9.6, that's extraordinary. Now, does he ever wind up in that situation where they say, you know what, we don't need you to process spectacularly well, and we don't need you to negotiate the pocket spectacularly well, because we can minimize all of these things because you're in a completely advantageous situation. Well, if you have a completely advantageous situation, what are the chances you hit the lottery and you're the quarterback that somebody is selecting for that? Brock Purdy has been selected for a very advantageous situation where they can work with his skill set, which is not spectacular, but he's a good decision maker. And so if you're picking a quarterback for a completely advantageous quarterback situation, he's probably going to be a good decision maker. So Will Levis's downside is probably not the downside you're willing to accept.
Yeah. My question with him, I guess, I had seen enough. Like I don't fault the Titans for making this move. I would have made the same move. So having said that, I recognize the arm talent, the ability that Levis has. I just wonder with him, like, does the processing ever get better? Like, does the ability to navigate in the pocket ever get better? I mean, we've talked about that. Like, the more you're in the league, the more defenses you see, the more you should be able to recognize and process what's going on out there. But like, that's probably the most discouraging part about Sunday. Go look at the interceptions he threw. He wasn't under pressure.
No.
Like, it was a clean pocket where he sees the field and he just lets it fly. And it was either inaccurate or just totally the wrong decision. And you can't have too much of that as a quarterback in this league.
I think that stuff can get better. The question is to what degree. And I think it's hard, having seen what we've seen through, I think it's 19 starts, to say substantially better. But again, say he's here for at least next year, but maybe 2 years as a backup, and then they just let his contract expire and he goes somewhere. So he's here for 2 years primarily as a backup, and then he's somewhere else maybe as a bridge or a backup, and then maybe he gets a chance to start. How much better can it have gotten in that time? Well, I thought it was kind of BS that his timeout with the shoulder here was going to help him. And when he came out of those 3 games watching, it seemed like it helped him with that stuff. So it's a fluid thing. It's not linear. Everybody says that, I like him personally. I think he's a good dude. I'd like to see things ultimately go well for him, but I wouldn't place much of a bet on the ceiling being especially high. I still think there's a chance he could resurface and be a satisfactory starting quarterback somewhere at some point. But satisfactory,
right?
Ryan Tannehill level satisfactory in a good system that could get you to playoffs. That to me would be like
best case,
optimistic ceiling.
Right. Yeah. I think,
but a lot of teams would take that. I mean, this
no
team
doubt
would take that.
Heck yeah. They'd take it right now. The Callahan part of this is interesting to me too. We've talked about the, at times, effusive praise that there was on Callahan's front on Levis heading into this. And I realize that some of that is just naturally, you're a new head coach taking a new job. You're coming in to work with the quarterback, and you're going to have some of that just naturally flows out of your mouth anyway. I think we saw at the beginning part of the season, and he said it even yesterday, like one of the things Callahan said yesterday was, when you're in the building and like you're going over video and you're looking at film, Levis is elite at that. Like he can diagnose what's going on. He can tell you exactly what he's seeing out there. He does it on the practice field. The challenge has been getting it from the field and the classroom to the game, which is ultimately the only thing that really matters in this league. And he's not been able to do it consistently enough. I think you saw it earlier in the year when he was making some of those mistakes. I think Callahan was in shock like the first 2 weeks. Like there's the shot of him on the sideline after he rolls the ball on the ground saying, "What the F are you doing?" Like, I think there was some of that early in the year where he's like, this is not at all on game day is not at all what I'm seeing in the practice field and in the classroom.
That was very telling.
So how much do you factor that part of it in, where like the coaching part of it and taking it, on the classroom, on the practice field, it's what you think it should look like with him. And then he can't translate it to game day. Some guys just can't do it. Some guys just can't translate it to game day. Is in any sort of referendum on Callahan as a coach working with a quarterback that it has played out this way with Levis in your mind?
It's hard to say, not knowing more, but based on what you're saying, and that quote was very telling yesterday. Terrific in the classroom, good on the practice field, doesn't translate to games. So there's a little bit of like a deer in the headlights kind of feeling, presuming that the deer is good when the headlights aren't on.
Yep.
You know. So who's that indict? Number one. Well, it indicts the guy who can do it in the classroom and on the practice field, and it doesn't translate. And I think, Callahan was pretty much saying what you just said. Like, I'm baffled by the inability for this to translate. Now, I think he was saying I'm baffled by the inability for us all to translate this.
Yeah.
For me and Nick Holtz and Bo Hardigree to work with him to get this to translate. But ultimately, if they're getting it out of him in the meeting room and if they're getting it out of him on the practice field, I think it's a reasonable expectation with every other guy, if you're doing those things, to expect it on game day.
Yeah.
And then when you don't get it on game day, you come in on Monday and you say, what the hell was that?
Right.
And I think they've had a lot of that. And then at a certain point you say, well, he can't do it on Sunday. I think that's what the kind of Monday conversation was, where he was talking about, the accountability and the fairness to the locker room and all of that, which I think at quarterback can be kind of different. I think maybe it would have been better couched like we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very good quote by him. And I think he might have been better served to say on Monday, like, hey, we're seeing it during the week and it's not translating on Sundays. And when it's not translating on Sundays, it's killing everybody.
Couple more things I want to get to on the Levis front coming up next with PK. We'll do that. Brian Callahan also sounding off at his press conference yesterday. We'll get into that coming up as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Tune in to 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville tonight for MTSU men's basketball. Blue Raiders taking on Lipscomb at the Murphy Center. Tip-off at 6:30, pregame beginning at 6 o'clock. Coverage also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at TotallyHitsNashville.com. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts for PK on the Titans, 615-737-1025, our phone number. I'm interested to see, as you brought up, PK, next 2 years, Titans could have Levis on the roster. He could be there. He could be either in competition with whatever veteran they bring in this offseason, serve as the backup to the veteran or the next rookie that they draft. Or the Titans could operate like some other teams have and say, you know what? We like you. We'd love to have you around, but probably just not the greatest environment. You take off, go somewhere else. We'll eat the dead money, which is not that bad.
No.
Given back that he's a second-round pick, and you go try to find something for you elsewhere, and we'll address the quarterback position beyond that. I'm interested to see what the Titans' viewpoint on that is. Like, is Levis going to be on the team next year, or do they think it's better to just go ahead and cut bait on that in the offseason?
I think it's better to have him around. I mean, because you already need one, and going and finding two, is going to be a problem. Mason Rudolph, a free agent.
Yep.
Anything is possible, but he's going to go somewhere and be a backup of some level. Maybe they wash their hands of him, but
he's not going anywhere to start. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. But I envision him here in a backup role. And look, they could do poorly enough in this that he is competing for a spot, or somebody comes in and struggles and they have to turn things back over to him at some point. So
that'll go over well around here. That'll be good.
We will see. Yeah, it wouldn't bode well for them if they're in that situation.
Brian Callahan sounding off at his press conference yesterday. It's been making the rounds all over social media. They were talking about it on Get Up on ESPN just a few minutes ago about whether or not the Titans are soft. Easton Freeze posed that question to him yesterday, and that led to
prompted by Mike Herndon's column at paulkuharski.com.
No doubt. And that prompted a tirade from the Titans head coach. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say yesterday at his press conference.
There are a lot of folks who think this team is soft physically and mentally. How would you respond to that idea?
I mean, you really want to get me going today? Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think it's complete and total bull, if you want my honest opinion. These guys are tough, man. They go after it every day. They play hard as hell. And there's at no point have we ever put on tape at any point this season that this is a soft football team. Like, I can't even wrap my mind around how that would even be a conversation. I mean, just because we don't win games doesn't mean we're soft. These guys play their ass off. They play hard. They play physical. You can ask any team that plays against us that when they come off the field, they know they played us. Yeah, that makes me relatively angry that would be some presumption. That means you just don't watch the you don't do anything about it, that you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're looking at. So I won't stand for I'm not going to stand for anybody calling his football team soft. I think that's so. If there's opinions out there that feel that way, then they don't know anything about NFL football. So I'd like you to walk in there and call one of these guys soft and see what happens. This is not a soft football team at all, mentally or physically. And I think one of the things mentally that's really been impressive about the team is that the way that they keep fighting through the way that this season has gone. They've not shown at any point that they're not up to the task. They come out every day and work. They have. I mean, I'm really. You're gonna really get me going now. I mean, these guys come out here and they do everything possible to win games. And if there's any assumption anywhere that's outside of this building, again, we don't focus on all those things, but there's no possible explanation to say that this team is soft any way, shape, or form, mentally or physically. And the way that they go about their work it's insulting to me, to them, to everyone that works here. So I'm not that no chance ever in hell would I ever admit that to be the case, and neither would anybody in this locker room. So you can kind of shove that one right up your to be honest. So
a passionate response there from Brian Callahan.
Look, I'm not accusing them of being physically soft, but I would say a 3-word response to that. Nicholas Petit Frere. Is Nicholas Petit Frere physically or mentally tough?
He has not displayed that.
I think Nashville as a city with plenty of smart football people would look at him and say the answer is resoundingly no. And we've talked to him about that pretty directly in the locker room.
Yeah.
But this idea that because a guy is tougher than me, go challenge him about his toughness. Yeah, all of them can kick my ass. We know that. That doesn't make them, sufficiently NFL tough. And
That's not the bar in the NFL.
Most of them are.
Yeah.
But Nicholas Petit-Frere has been disappointing in his toughness growth in the NFL.
Now
he's backed down from people too often, and he's talked about that mentality.
I've said this earlier. Like, I think when the word soft gets thrown around, I mean, that's naturally going to generate that type of reaction from Brian Callahan when you're talking about professional sports. So I'm not necessarily surprised that it's made the rounds the way that I'm not, generally speaking, come away thinking that the Titans are a soft football team. But I do think you brought up some good points earlier in terms of like the mental part of this. That is, it's not just, oh, how tough are you physically? Like, can you respond mentally when things aren't going your way, when adversity hits? They've lost 7 games this year by 10 or more points. Now, some of that is just because they're not very good. I get that. Like, the talent level is just not good enough. Like, they're not going to compete with Buffalo and Detroit. So I understand that. Some of it, I think, is things like Washington, I think, is a good example. Like, it just totally spiraled on them, and they couldn't pull themselves out of it at that point. And you did say earlier, PK, that you thought maybe a little of that was performative from Brian Callahan in terms of the way he answered that question. What do you mean by that?
Well, he doesn't generally raise his voice or swear. And so, he was defending his team there in a way that it's unsurprising that it's on Get Up and all around the internet. And he's a guy that is perceived, right or wrong, to be in jeopardy job-wise. I think the owner wouldn't mind seeing him defending his team like that. His players wouldn't mind seeing him defend his team like that. It was a nice opportunity for him put on a tee kind of to defend his boys, and to further endear himself to them by correcting something all of them would fight an opinion of, whether there's some accuracy to that opinion, which I think on the mental side there is, or not. So it's out of character at the very least.
Yep. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take more of your reaction to Brian Callahan's rant that he threw out there yesterday. All things Titans on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. This week's Nashville's Best Deal from Brewster's Real Ice Cream in Hendersonville. Brewster's offers handcrafted cakes, pies, and ice cream flavors of peppermint, Oreo, eggnog, and gingerbread man. Enjoy the magic of homemade happiness this season. Visit thegamenashville.com/deals and get half off a $50 gift card while supplies last. This is Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away to see Belmont men's basketball as they take on UC Irvine tonight at the Fisher Center. You call her 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Call her 3. On the Titans as well, 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. Deagle on YouTube says, it is insulting, but I'm even more mad at organizational leadership hasn't had the decency or respect enough to address the fan base. Callahan has at least answered for it as it relates to this front office setup that we've talked about.
He answers for everything. I asked him
it.
about this a couple of weeks ago
Yep.
and he said, "Hey, it's the deal. I'm the head coach and the face of the organization in that manner, and it's what I signed up for." I think most of us think it's not fair. He didn't make the decisions that are costing them this. He didn't draft Will Levis. He didn't have the power to make a decision about the personnel at right tackle, et cetera, et cetera. But this organization operates now in a fashion that only the head coach speaks. We will hear from more than that in one whole press conference. And maybe it'll be split into multiple press conferences, but in one whole appearance by other people after the season's over. And that'll give us a lot more to discuss in terms of rationale, explanations, direction, anticipating what they do going forward after the season's over. And so we'll hear something from then. But I personally think that there's a degree of hiding by decision makers previous to that. And I don't think we're ever going to hear from the owner, except occasionally through, their Pravda arm.
Joel says, I hear Paul saying the things he's hearing is that Callahan and the front office are likely back next year, which makes sense to me. So are other reporters talking about, quote, Callahan coaching for his job, just being dramatic, trying to generate engagement? What do you think about that?
I think they presume that he's coaching for his job because it would appear that way. I think, and they think that Amy can be, shockingly short. I don't want to say short-sighted, but that she can make a rash decision on a guy after 1 year. And they presume that that's the case with bad results. Very rarely, it's happened, but one-shot coaches are rare. And I don't think the other reporters are in position to get the sense that I'm getting. And again, I'd say that the sense that I'm getting could, be washed away with the disastrous performance in Oilers uniforms against the Texans in the final home game. So I'm not writing it in stone or blood.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Things can change in a hurry with this franchise. I brought it up earlier. Like, the biggest question I've got, who's fixing this thing? You laid out the Carthon moves that he's made in your piece at paulkowarski.com, where some positions have gotten better, a lot of positions have gotten worse since he's taken over. And there's still a lot of work left to be done. So I guess what I'm really wondering here, how patient is Amy willing to be? That's what I keep coming back to in a lot of these conversations. Because it seems to me, PK, that if you continue with this route, you're going to either have to find a veteran quarterback that's probably in all likelihood going to be less than satisfactory in terms to starting level NFL quarterback play in this league, or you're going to draft a rookie to be your quarterback, which could be a total crapshoot, as we know. And the history of that with this franchise has not gone well. There's a ton of holes left to fill this offseason. So it feels to me like this team is pretty far away from being a team that's competitive. So how patient is Amy willing to be? Like, if she brings this group back next year and they're not in the playoffs, are they out of a job? If she brings this group back next year and they go 7-10, is that good enough to say, oh, well, things are heading in the right direction moving forward? Like, because this doesn't seem like regardless of what they do at quarterback, unless they just strike lightning in a bottle like Houston did with CJ Stroud, this seems like a multi-year fix to me. And I wonder how patient she's willing to be through that.
Yeah, well, I'd say the same thing about next year that I kind of felt about this year. I didn't come into this year thinking jobs were on the line, but I thought the expectation for this year would be for this team to get increasingly better as the season went on, and that's not what's happened. But I certainly think next year the expectation would be to see this team get increasingly better as the season goes on. No matter who they bring in. Bring in people to address these needs that we're always talking about, coach them up, and show improvement as a team as the season goes along, with players that you've brought in getting increasingly more comfortable with what you're doing and performing better as things go on. There's going to be a good rate of turnover on most teams every year, and certainly on a team like this. So, Chad Brinker told me last year, well, his big question with how many new guys they were bringing in was how quickly would they gel?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think you can use that again. You have to accelerate the gelling, and gelling accelerates if you have better players who play better.
Yeah. The gelling part of it, there's probably some of that. Like Ridley's an interesting one to me. Ridley came in and there was about a 4 or 5 week stretch where he didn't do anything. And then he started to figure out. And he's been, I would say, fine since then. I wouldn't say he's been great since then, but he's been fine since then. So I think some of that probably is gelling. They figured some things out. He made some adjustments, and they got him more involved in the game plan. He started catching the ball, all those things. But some of these guys are just going to be bad signings, right? Like, is Snead going to be on the field at any point?
We'll see.
Like right now, that looks
he's not on the
good.
field next year playing well. It's a lot of people are willing to call it a bust already. I don't think you can call it a bust already. If he comes out and has a Pro Bowl All-Pro season next year, then he will have had a dud season, not a dud trade. But if it's a dud trade, that's a really bad thing. You also have to make quicker assessments.
Yes,
you can't waste 4 weeks on Traylon Burks.
Yes,
when you've got a better guy behind him.
Yes.
And Callahan and his staff has to be more aware of those things.
Well, then you got to figure out right tackle, right guard, you can probably throw into the mix. Edge rusher, you're going to have to address. You're going to have to address wide receiver. I still think they need a young guy at wide receiver that comes in because they don't really have one right now. You got all that to figure out. Safety that you got to figure out.
Inside
quarterback.
Linebacker, you got to sort out. Yeah, we're kind of setting quarterback aside as above all of this, which it should be.
But all of that you've got to figure out this offseason. The likelihood of you doing that's just so low to a satisfactory enough level where you're back in competition next year for a playoff spot.
And this is a year after we said they had too much to address
in
one offseason.
Exactly.
Well, this can't be too much to address in one offseason. Otherwise, you will be extending into 3 off seasons. And teams repair rosters in 2 offseasons.
Well, and I guess the one thing that you could have going your way right now, like you look at Indianapolis, they're a mess too. I mean, Anthony Richardson has been horrible for the most part this year. So what are they going to look like as they move forward? Jacksonville, we know, is an absolute tire fire down there. So your own division could get you in a spot where you're competitive pretty quickly if you hit on most of those. Like even Houston. Like Houston hadn't had I know they're going to end up winning the division, but Houston's not had the type of year this year that I think most expected heading into the year. So maybe your division is more gettable moving forward than we thought heading into this season, but you still got to make a lot of the right decisions.
And maybe, there's change coming in Jacksonville for sure. I would think there's a GM change at least coming in Indianapolis. So you're quote unquote a year ahead of them in terms of building your program. If in fact your owner likes the direction you're heading in terms of not results, but in terms of process and the overall direction you're heading, she would see you as conceivably, and I don't think that's unreasonable to say, ahead of those teams in terms of being on your roadmap. That's hard to hear probably for a lot of people, but those teams are messes too.
No, there's a bunch of messes in this division right now. And Unfortunately for you, you're one of them. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. Preds Pick to Click coming up next. We'll take the first caller, 615-737-1025. If you guess a goal scorer for the Preds tonight, you win a pair of tickets to a future Nashville Predators home game. We'll do that. Wrap up the show with final thoughts on the Titans as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
It's time for Preds Picks to click.
And a shot at the score.
Do you think you know who will score a goal in tonight's Predators game?
Little give and go.
Shoot your shot for a chance to win Preds tickets. Call 615-737-1025 now. It's Pick to Click now on Robby and Rexrode.
Preds Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode. Preds back in action tonight, taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Buck drop 7 o'clock pregame, 6 o'clock here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Standings in the competition. Rexrode remains in first place. 5 correct answers. One of those belonging to Kuharski, by the way.
Thank you.
So Kuharski also in first place. Keyser on the board last time out. Brings him up to 3. I also have 3. The listeners at 2. It's been a struggle for the listeners so far this year. We'll see if that changes today. Let's head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Josh to the program. Josh, good morning. Thanks for calling in. Who's your pick to click tonight for the Nashville Predators?
Gonna go with the high hand, Jonathan Marchessault.
Going with Marchessault. Josh, appreciate the call, man.
Good luck.
Marchessault playing very well right now. Scored again last time out. That line of Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault playing very well for the Predators at the moment. I'm up next. I'm going to go with Forsberg. I'm going to do so reluctantly. I think he's got 1 goal in his last 16 games, 17 games. So in some ways, that's very discouraging. In other ways, I feel like he's due. So I'll go Forsberg. Marchessault, Forsberg off the board. Paul Kuharski, your pick to click for the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, I should take somebody terrible for Rexrode, but in the spirit of the competition, I'll take Stamkos.
With Steven Stamkos in the competition. So the top line off the board. Keyser, your pick to click for the Preds tonight.
We go with Ryan O'Reilly down on the second line.
Going with Ryan O'Reilly. Marchessault, Forsberg, Stamkos, O'Reilly. The picks to click tonight for the Nashville Predators. Preds make a trade last night. Alex Carrier to Montreal. Justin Barron, a defenseman coming back the other way from the Canadiens to Nashville. And we'll see how that affects the Predators as they move forward here. Andrew Burnett with us earlier in the show. If you missed it, check it out, Robby and Rexrode, wherever you get your podcast.
I got a question for you about clubhouse baseball.
Okay.
What do you think about so the Yankees traded for Cody Bellinger?
Yeah.
Cody Bellinger is married to Giancarlo Stanton's ex-wife and has 3 children with them. Now, it's nothing new. I mean, clubhouses are filled with guys who've dated, the same women, but this seems like an extreme factor here. You think they check in with Stanton about,
I would hope so. Say, hey, man.
Potential for awkwardness is huge here, but Stanton has to not care for the good of the team.
I would think so. I was not aware of this until you made me aware of this. That's pretty wild. Like, what's the conversation like with Stanton at that point? Hey, man, so we're thinking about bringing in Bellinger. You cool with that? With that history? You going to be able to coexist in the locker room together? I don't know. I've never heard of that specific dynamic being involved with a professional team ever.
I bet it has.
It probably has. I just can't remember one.
I mean, these guys are teammates are in the same circles a lot socially, but yeah, it has a lot of potential for weirdness.
It does. How do you feel about it as a Yankees fan?
I hope it doesn't cause any difficulties, but I'm not particularly concerned with making Stanton happy unless he's in the postseason hitting a lot of home runs.
I just want to see
during the
Stanton,
season, he's going to be on the DL a lot of time. He won't be around Mrs. Bellinger.
I just need him to try to steal as many bases as possible.
Yeah.
It's of great entertainment value to me when he tries.
I mean, for a professional athlete in a sport that requires running, to include a guy that can't run, it's pretty remarkable. It's a remarkable feat.
So Soto gone, Bellinger in. I'm sure they're not done, but what do you make? What do you make of how your Yankees are looking?
In Fried and Williams too. Yeah. They still need two more guys. First baseman, third baseman. Bellinger can play some first, but then you need a center fielder. I mean, I like it so far, but they're not. I sure hope they're not finished.
Scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you to watch Mason Rudolph quarterback this Sunday in Indianapolis?
Solid 3.
That's higher than I thought.
I mean, I like news. There's going to be a new storyline. I like a refreshed storyline. So virtually anything's going to get a 3 from me.
Okay.
That's my rationale.
All right.
You? A 1?
Can we go in the negatives? I'll go 1.
What time do the Packers play?
I have Monday Night Football, so there's no escape there. I just got to watch the whole thing. All 3 hours of that Titans game I'm going to consume on Sunday. Looking forward to it. Mason, slinging around out there, son.
Nashville is fired up. Get fired up. Buy your tickets for the Houston game for Christmas. I'm sure the billboard's up. I haven't seen it. I didn't look for it today. But there's only one remaining chance to see this team this year. And then, team's never the same.
Crowd did look a little better against Cincinnati.
Crowd was much better against Cincinnati.
Until
And
they all left.
There was some orange sprinkled into the lower bowl, but I think Titans fans did the majority of the work.
Didn't they have Brad Hopkins come out there to do
Brad Hopkins was in a tough spot.
Titans fans!
There had been a tough stretch of football right before Brad Hopkins had to come out and wave a towel and get the crowd excited. I felt badly for Brad.
Oh, boy. That's going to do it for us today. PK will be back tomorrow with us on the program.
Don't block the box. Lock your locks.
Jason Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.